Good day, everyone. I'd like to try and explain how our adorable British college curriculum works. I normally do this when new parents join us, but so this is a bit of a recap, particularly perhaps for somebody who's missed the introduction to how the school works and how our college curriculum works. So, first off, the curriculum is not a list of subjects. The content of a curriculum is much more than that. It's about the concepts that would be taught, yes, but it's also what is taught in a particular subject, but how it's taught. And it involves a sort of interactive system that's not just a list of topics and a list of things to learn. It's an approach to learning and education, which is much wider than the list of subjects. Now, our curriculum is blended all the way through from year 7 to 12. And by blended, I mean that we don't just pick on one particular area, one particular international curriculum. We use a Nigerian curriculum, we use an international curriculum from literally, it's called the International Middle East Curriculum. We also use the English curriculum, or the British curriculum, as some people call it. We blend in A-levels, we blend in WIEC, we blend in BESI exams. It's not just a list of exams, remember. It is also a list of a sort of approach to how we work. So although we use Nigerian subject names, for instance, in year 7 to 9, like CCA, and in year 10 to 12, things like physics, civics, there is a blend across the board. We are an international school. We do, for instance, encourage modern foreign languages in year 10 to 12. We do French, we do Chinese, we do Spanish. Of course, we also teach Igbo or Yoruba, and we teach a wide variety of languages. In year 10 to 11, in year 10 and 11, students might be doing 10 subjects. The Nigerian curriculum only says that students should do 9, but we believe in a much broader and wider curriculum base. In year 12, they normally drop subjects, and the same in year 13, they drop subjects that perhaps are non-WIEC subjects, like, for instance, Chinese. But all do, Nigerian subjects like civics, and the vocational subjects like catering or photography, which they have to do as part of the Nigerian curriculum in years 10 to 12. So in Key Stage 3, we run, the basis of the curriculum taught is IMYC, that's International Middle Years Curriculum. And the lesson structure for each of the lessons is step 1, 2, and 3. So that's the knowledge harvest at the beginning of the lesson. So the teacher is finding out what the students know to start with, and they spend some time making sure that they're not going over work again that's already known and understood. So that's the knowledge harvest. So you find out what the student knows to start with. They then a sort of research activity, but it could be a research activity set by the student, by the teacher, or particularly as it's developed through the lesson. And then at the end of the lesson, or towards the end of the lesson, students review what has been learnt and complete a journal to record exactly what they've learnt. At the same time, people say, well, don't they do notes? Well, of course they take notes, but they also take notes from the activities, but also the teachers produce online notes for them to look at as well. We are a school that uses technology and laptops, for instance, but laptops is not a free activity. Laptops are only opened in classes when the teacher tells the student to. So they're very much controlled. And we operate a walled garden in terms of internet use, so that students can only get access to sites and types of sites that we approve. And we run an AI filtering system that learns as it goes. If students are starting to focus too much on one particular topic. So, for instance, if a student searches once for a football verse, that's not an issue. The second time, it flags it as an issue because it's not part of the learning process. So it learns, that the system learns as we go. And of course, there's the filtering system blocks out totally inappropriate sites. KSU are three letters that we really do focus on right from the beginning. They stand for knowledge, skills, and understanding. Knowledge, for instance, and I take an example of knowing what Bernoulli's principle is in physics. Knowing what it is, or writing down Bernoulli's principle, is a knowledge. A skill would being able to apply that knowledge to perhaps in a practical situation, like understanding or being able to bend the ball round a wall in football. That's, applying Bernoulli's principle. Because the skill, however, is better for Ronaldo than myself. I couldn't bend a ball round a wall if I tried. So, if you like, the students learn some skills, but at the same time they understand how Bernoulli's principle applies to those skills. So, and that's, again, the understanding of the terms of speed and pressure, how speed over one particular part of a wing, for instance, in a plane increases the pressure or the thrust for the aeroplane to take off. So in terms, they begin to understand the application of Bernoulli's principle in real life. So for instance, a train going through a train station at speed, pulling people or pushing people in, and they understand the physics that's going on. So it's not just learning Bernoulli's principle, this is what happens, but it's also applying it and understanding the application. So understanding, for instance, how Bernoulli's principle works with the plane taking off. So if you're a passenger in a plane, understanding the physics that is happening at the same time. So this blend of curriculum, I think it's really, really important to recognise that maths is maths, or chemistry is chemistry. Physics is still physics. Physics is not defined, or maths is not defined by the exam that you're taking at the end. Yes, the way that the subject is examined is different, perhaps. The approach is different. But still, the subject that's being taught is still the same. So, for instance, here's an example for mathematicians. I'm a maths teacher, but using sine and cosine rule in a practical situation is something that has to happen, has to be tested in the WIAC exam in year 12. So how do we get to that stage that the children are totally confident? Well, actually, in year 12, they're doing that by the end of the process. So they start in year 7 with understanding the idea of scales and maps. By year 8, they're starting to use bearings and as measure of direction. When they get to year 9, they're using those bearings and scalings to interpret positions on maps. And those would be tested, for instance, that process would be tested in our checkpoint or our BESI exams, in 2 year 9 exams. When they get to year 10, they're starting to apply Pythagoras' theorem in right-angled triangle situations to bearings like sine and cosine. And cosine ratios. When they get to year 11, they're starting to use the sine and cosine rules, so for a triangle of any type. And they extend that to harder level questions in year 12. So in year 11, it's tested in an IGCSE exam, and in year 12, it's tested in a WIAC exam. There's not a difference to the topic that's being tested. Perhaps the question at year 12 traditionally might seem to be harder, but in many ways, as far as maths goes, for instance, the questions in year 12 are very similar to the questions in year 11. There are other subjects, of course. I'm a maths teacher, so I teach maths and really get it. But in other subjects, like chemistry, for instance, the topics can be developed again. And for instance, we might be looking at the changes in materials or changes to materials. So for instance, year 7, they might be using the particle method to describe chemical reactions. while in year 8 they start to use word equations to describe reactions. And when they get to year 9, they're using those word equations and symbol equations to describe the reactions. And that's tested in BESI and tested in Checkpoint. In year 10, they're starting to write the chemical formula and chemical equations down, while in year 11, they might be using the concept of electrolysis to describe extracting some metals and productions of hydrogen, while in year 12, they might be just illustrating the laws of constant composition and multiple proportions. So the changes to materials is the concept that's being developed all the way through. And it's not as though the year 11 exam or the year 12 exam is exclusive. You know, in year 9 it tests, some things are tested. In year 11 some things are tested. In year 12 some things are tested. But the topic itself is consistent and develops all the way through the school. And that's what I mean by a totally blended curriculum. Of course, the external exams are important, but we report very continually internally on our own internal exams. And we have a system called RELPS, which stands for Revision and Learning Programme. RELPS are done each week and are short answer objective style questions. And we report them on grades 1 to 10. And very basically, you know, grade 10 is 100%. Grade 5 is the same as a good grade C, or at least 50%. So you get some idea. The grade 1s to 10 are reported all the way through up until year 11. In year 11, we start to also include the WIAC grades. But I think, for instance, it's important to recognise that to get a grade A1 in WIAC, the pass mark is 75%. To get a grade 9 in IGCSE, the expectation is 92%. There's a huge difference in terms of expectation. So going back to that example I gave in maths of the sine and cosine rule, you can't get it 3/4 of the way wrong in IGCSE and hope to get it top grade. To get it, you need to get it entirely right. In WIAC, you need to go 3/4 of the way through the question and get 75%. So the expectation in year 11 is actually that the percentage to get the top grade is much higher, which is why we report on the grades 1 to 10 level, so people can see how near they're getting to that grade 9 or 92, 93%. So again, all subjects are covered every third week when we come to our RELPS. In the first weeks 1 and 2, core subjects, English, Maths and Science, are covered. But in the third week, all subjects that are taught are covered. And that includes, you know, history, geography, religion, etc. Every single subject that's taught in school. Every term, we have longer tests, written tests as well as computer-based tests. And those every term tests are what you and I would call end-of-term exams. They're written papers in core, and every year, at the end of every year, a decision is made on progression into the next year. So, for instance, that's the target is, the expectation is that you have to get 5 grades at level 5 or higher, including English and Maths. So it's no good thinking that you can go from year 7 to year 8 without meeting our core standards. And our core standards are 5 grades at level 5 or higher, and those have to include English or Maths. Now, of course, we run a number of external checkpoints on progress, and there are many others that we use, but some people ask us about IELTS, and for instance, it's not normally needed for our students because our students are first language speakers and sit a first language IGCSE exam, and that English IGCSE first language exam is equivalent to IELTS, and therefore universities accept it abroad in place of IELTS. You're a first language if you have got that grade 5 in English first language. We also enter competitions like the Olympiad, the Maths Olympiad, the Science Olympiad. And at the moment this term, in fact, we're just waiting for the results of some of our students who have got through to the 4th round of our Maths Olympiad. We're extremely proud of our individual students, but of course, everybody everybody gets the chance to sit and have a go at external competitions. But in terms of our lower school, they set Year 7 and 8 Cambridge progress tests, and it's optional for this. We don't say you have to sit them, but they are optional tests at the end of each year about the amount of progress that's made in English, Maths and Science, their core subjects again. We also, of course, in Year 7, test everybody for their reading. So anybody who comes into the school is tested for their reading, because we've found over a period of time, literacy levels from primary schools is below the international average in Nigeria. So we spend a great deal of time making sure that students' reading levels meet international standards. And then in Year 9, we have the Cambridge Checkpoint exam, which again is English, Maths and Science. But at the same time in Year 9, they do the local BESSY exam. So everybody does everything. Those two, Cambridge Checkpoint and BESSY, are all for everybody. When we come on to the older students, Year 11, they do the IGCSE subjects only. Now, I need to be clear about what I mean by that. Some subjects, like government, that are taught in Year 10 and 11, can't be examined in Year 11 for IGCSE because it's not an international subject. So government is not a subject that can be examined at IGCSE. Okay, so civics can't be, for instance, again. But when they come to Year 12, they do WIAC and NECO only subjects. And again, those are the subjects that WIAC and NECO. So, for instance, they can't do Chinese. They can't do Spanish because they're not WIAC subjects. So those subjects, of course, there's a common core of English, Maths, civics, vocational subjects that they have to do in WIAC. They have a choice, in theory, of choosing 8 or 9. We seriously recommend that every student does 9. But in some cases, in discussion with parents, we reduce the number because the Nigerian curriculum says you only have to do 8 or 9 subjects. We then, of course, we also, prepare students for JAM. And this year we had a number of students with over the 300 level, which we were very pleased with their progress. Also, we're a digital centre for SATs, so students who want to sit the SATs for America can sit them in school. They don't have to travel to a different state. We are a digital centre. And from this year, all SATs are digital, from anywhere in the world. We also are a centre for AS levels at Year 12. So, for instance, if you're thinking about going on to the UK, we sit the Cambridge AS levels and the Cambridge, in Year 13, the Cambridge A levels. So, internationally, you can still sit AS levels, and A levels are still, the Cambridge A level is still usable for direct entry to Nigerian universities. Through JAM. So, and that's recently, that has recently been approved. We have to be very careful of advice that comes over the internet. This comes direct from Cambridge and direct from the British Council. A levels that we run in the school in Year 13 are suitable for direct entry to Nigerian universities. Of course, if you're going to the UK or you're going to the US, A-levels are almost a prerequisite for entry to good universities. I say good, challenging universities like Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, MIT, because you need to stand out as being different, and they are the gold standard for qualifications. So those are some of the exams we do through the school. But I have to go back to my first point, that a curriculum is not a set of exams. It's not. It's much more than that. It's more than a list of topics to learn. It's much more than that. It's much more than learn this or remember that. It gives the students the skills that they need in life. And employees need these sorts of things. They need empathy. They need to have good teamwork. If you're an employer, you don't want somebody who just functions in isolation. I've been working in Nigeria for the best part of 15 years now. And I can remember with horror the first time somebody came for a job, for a post in a school I was the head at, and they were supposed to be applying for use for a computer network person. They couldn't even switch on the computer. So they'd got a computer studies WIAC, but they had no idea actually how to use computers at all. So giving students the skills that they need is much more than just a piece of paper. We need to give them empathy. We need to give them teamwork. And in this era of AI, students need creativity. They need to stand out from the crowd. And I believe that the best curriculums in the world really prepares students for the next step in their learning. It is not the end of learning, it's the beginning of learning. A great curriculum should do that. And I believe this blended British, Nigerian, American curriculum that we have here serves that purpose. So, if you're not sure about anything, please do contact the school. We're always very willing to talk and to explain more. So thank you very much, and goodbye.